咁咧，其實社企民間高峰會咧就係我哋嘅同埋第4屆亞洲社企國際會議咧，就係1連7日嘅香港國際慈善及社企週中間嘅活動嚟嘅。咁啱啱咧今日第4日就去到中間點。咁啊，大家我有啲嘉賓都好熟數面幾日嚟見過啦。咁我哋21號咧就有個聯合嘅開幕會議。咁啊，開幕之後咧就輪到尋日同埋前日咧，就有呢個香港賽馬會嘅國際慈善論壇，咁大家有啲都可能嚟過聽過啊 Michael Porter 講嘢啦，咁其實都幾好笑嘅，因為原來唔少嘉賓咧都有好多特別要求嘅，比如話 Michael Porter 咧，其實佢原來唔喺玻璃杯度飲水嘅，咁所以咧我嗰日唔知喺即係出邊 cocktail 嘅時候咧，聽到佢哋話：哇，點解大會連水都唔俾杯啊 Michael Porter 飲啊？咁點會咧？因為的而且確我哋其實搞咗好多論壇，咁啊淨係社企民間高峰會都教識我好多嘢，咁於是乎咧就原來阿 Michael Porter 咧淨係飲樽裝綠茶嘅啫，佢就唔飲水嘅，咁所以呢啲都係幾有趣嘅小通識嚟㗎嚇。咁咧就多謝社企民間高峰會俾咗呢個機會，我過去呢4年幫手學咗好多嘢啦。咁咧我都喺度衷心咁感謝咧我唔敢叫佢師傅啦，咁但係就係的而且確係好多做社企嘅人嘅師傅，就係我哋社企民間高峰會嘅籌委會主席阿李正儀博士 ，Dr. Jane Lee please。
早晨啊，咁多位早晨。民政事務局劉江華局長、許曉輝副局長、各位嘉賓、各位今日出席嘅朋友，好歡迎同埋好多謝各位呢係今日出席第9屆社企民間高峰會嘅開幕儀式。正如前幾日講呢，我哋今次係參與同埋一齊有一個星期嘅國際慈善及社企週嘅一個嘅開幕。當時呢，我係講呢，連同呢個高峰會成立前1年呢，由民政事務局舉辦嘅社企高峰會，我哋好多老朋友呢，今年係第10次聚首。咁今朝早呢，我見到有一啲朋友嘅時候呢，佢話：係啊，真係眨下眼，原來10年啦。我哋10年嚟呢，一齊共同探討社企同埋社會創新各方面嘅議題。喺呢10年嚟呢，我自己就因為參加呢啲嘅活動，認識咗好多有心人。而且我哋仲成為好朋友。我仲記得喺2008年第1屆社企民間高峰會，我哋當時大概只係有300人出席，只係有好少香港人呢係聽過社企。我最記得就係我身邊嘅同事同埋朋友第一個反應咩嚟㗎咁。而家呢，如果我哋做任何嘅調查呢，我哋都知道呢係有超過80%嘅香港人係聽過社企，甚至係有支持社企、購買社企嘅服務同埋佢嘅產品。呢幾年嚟，更加越嚟越多機構主動咁樣接觸我哋高峰會，喺我哋嘅運作期間，主動我哋做一啲嘅合作，主動參加嘅人數呢，亦都係由當時嘅300人呢，到而家每年呢都係幾千人。我必須講，社企嘅理念係得能夠傳播同埋受到關注，並唔係只係因為呢個高峰會嘅成功，而係各人各自我哋嘅共同努力嘅成果。我哋成個香港其實係值得為呢一樣嘢而感到驕傲嘅。喺幾日前呢，我亦都喺開幕禮裏邊講過一啲跨越3項呢一個社企週嘅主辦活動機構嘅概念，一啲共同嘅理念。我哋用兼善、創效、利群呢3組嘅中文嘅語言。咁我哋高峰會就用咗創效。佢雖然代表咗一啲嘅活動嘅主題嘅重點，其實亦都代表咗我哋社企民間高峰會一貫所追求同埋所倡議嘅。如果大家認識我哋呢，知道呢，就知道我哋呢啲中文咁靚嘅書法呢，其實係阿 Florence 嘅手筆嚟嘅。民間高峰會今年採取創效為主題，強調創新嘅同時，亦都重視產生縱向嘅社會影響。我哋成日所講嘅 impact。同埋橫向嘅影響，橫向嘅影響係乜嘢呢？我就將佢演繹成為跨界別合作。我一直都認為合作呢，先至係能夠使我哋個別微細嘅力量成為眾人之事，先至能夠共同係使重要嘅價值觀得到產生深遠嘅影響。 今年我哋仲作出一個特別嘅嘗試，就係同第4屆學術性嘅亞洲社企國際學術機構合作，做一個共同舉辦我哋嘅研討會。為此我好高興，今朝早我哋能夠請到嚟自瑞典嘅大學嘅 Professor Victor Pestoff， 同埋聯合國社會發展研究所嘅 Dr. Pascal van Griethuysen， 佢哋作主題演講。陣間開幕式之後呢，就輪到佢哋同我哋分享。我哋今年嘅另一個新嘅嘗試呢，就係推動共益企業 B Corp。呢4個字呢，其實都係我哋膽粗粗嘅一個嘅翻譯嚟嘅啫。咁亦都係而家喺大陸對 B Corp 嘅一個嘅翻譯嘅概念。我哋就希望嚟緊呢段時間能夠喺高峰會呢個平台係再次建立一個新嘅運動。因此呢，我哋就喺琴日下晝呢，就已經係舉辦咗一個兩岸4地共益企業嘅論壇。而且咧就設立咗我哋嘅工作議案，讓我哋4地係能夠一齊推動更多商界喺呢個嘅共益嘅事業方面一齊參與同埋推動。而聽朝早我哋亦都今日都會啦嚇，Mr. Brian Honeyman 咧同埋 Mr. Marcello Palazzi 就會喺呢一個 B Corp 嘅議題咧係做一個嘅演講。另外我係必須同各位做一個特別報告，唔好意思啊。近呢幾年呢，我哋一直努力咁樣將呢一個嘅社企嘅概念落地，去到社區，為地區經濟提供社會創新嘅分享嘅經驗。我好多謝 Alan 同埋 Rebecca， 我哋2位嘅好好嘅同工，一直嘅領導，讓我哋喺呢個嘅社區論壇做得好好嘅成效。我哋今年一共做咗4個社區論壇，加埋以往呢，其實我哋係做咗有好幾個㗎啦。我期望呢，我哋係嚟緊都陸續能夠做晒18區。另外呢，我哋亦都喺藉住呢一個嘅社區論壇呢，喺我哋今年5月份搞咗一個大概有900人參與咗嘅一個 BAZAAR。呢個 BAZAAR呢，就體現咗呢商業佢哋點樣參與我哋社企嘅合作嘅精神。我哋今日其實大家都知道喺出邊呢，我哋都會有好多展銷，亦都有一個類似 BAZAAR嘅一個咁樣嘅形象。我哋應該會喺10月份呢，仲有一個展銷會呢。今次我哋就會喺中西區嘅英皇書院嗰度做。咁希望呢，大家到時踴躍支持。如果我冇記錯呢，應該係29號嚇，10月29號。講到落地呢嚇，我亦都唔能夠唔講今年一個新搞作。呢個另一個新搞作呢，我就必須要多謝香港女工商及專業人員聯會，佢哋主辦呢個行社企。喺今朝嘅主題演講之後呢。呢度呢嚇，呢個場呢就會大變身。到時呢，我哋就會有好多好玩嘅時段。據講呢嚇，我哋應該係會有青年人嘅跳街舞啦，有合唱團啦，戲劇工作坊、藝術教育，仲有好奇怪可以打泰拳添。歡迎大家呢，到時一齊係參加。咁如果呢，大家啲腦震盪得太緊要嘅時候呢，你想休息下就落嚟玩啦。咁我哋都希望呢，就係設立一個特別嘅一個嘅咁樣嘅嘉年華，讓大家中間可以休息下，落嚟玩下，幫襯下社企。最後呢，我必須再次多謝我哋各個嘅籌委會嘅成員，同埋我哋嘅合作嘅夥伴，多年嚟嘅支持合作無間，先至讓我哋嘅高峰會嘅活動能夠不斷咁樣創新同埋轉型，實踐我哋自己心目中係相信嘅兼善、創效、利群嘅精神。我哋必須再次多謝民政事務局不間斷嘅贊助，特別係許曉輝副局長多年嚟對我哋好悉心嘅支持。當然仲有其他，譬如和富社企、香港女工商及專業人員聯會等等，我就唔再讀晒各位嘅贊助單位，同埋我哋今次同我哋一齊初次合作嘅亞洲社企國際會議專責委員會 Dr. Katie Chan 同埋樂平基金 Jeff， 冇大家嘅一齊共同出謀獻策，我哋今次嘅高峰會係唔可能得到兩岸四地各個朋友大家嘅參與同埋支持嘅。希望大家能夠呢2日呢係大家熱誠咁樣去參與我嘅活動，讓我哋社企同埋創新嘅精神得以成為我哋每一個人我哋生活嘅一部分，喺香港嘅民間得以開花結果。多謝大家。
多謝籌委會主席李正儀博士。 你見到咧，其實我哋每一年社企民間高峰會本場項咧都有好多合作伙伴啦。咁啊，另外我哋特別多謝我哋嘅贊助機構啦，有好多都係我哋長期嘅合作單位。咁當然啦，其實都有好多社企咧係我哋嘅拍檔同埋籌委會成員。咁今年咧就多咗咧3個唔同學系嘅單位咧去幫我哋請好多世界各地嘅教授嚟。I would like to ask all of you to put a welcoming hand on behalf of Hong Kong to welcome all the professors from around the world. They are from Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, from the East to the West。我有位巴西嚟嘅，佢而家好精神，因為佢話佢 jet lag 都好緊要咁我哋今日咧就好榮幸請到香港特別行政區民政事務局局長劉江華先生咧作為我哋嘅主禮嘉賓，有請劉局長致辭。
李正儀博士、各位社企界嘅朋友、各位嘉賓，好高興咧，今年咧係再次出席社企民間高峰會嘅開幕典禮。民政事務局多年嚟作為主要嘅贊助機構，見證着咧係高峰會嘅規模不斷壯大，實感榮幸。我記得舊年就喺修頓，今年就喺會展。呢個就係一個好好嘅體驗。喺各方嘅共同努力之下呢，今年嘅高峰會成為香港國際慈善及社企週一項重要嘅活動，更同時舉辦第4屆亞洲社企國際會議，嚟自世界各地嘅社企領袖、學者同埋創業家聚首一堂，共創新思維。我要向一直努力不懈籌辦高峰會嘅李正儀博士、各個主辦同埋合辦嘅機構、支持同埋贊助機構致以衷心嘅謝意。我哋亦都熱烈歡迎呢係遠道而嚟呢各個嘅學者同埋專家。呢2日喺會展舉行嘅國際研討會，固然係大家嘅焦點，但係其實早在喺5月份開始，高峰會已經走入社區，舉辦論壇、市集同埋導賞團等多元化嘅活動，向市民推廣社企嘅文化。呢一屆嘅高峰會主題社會創新喺亞洲，創意到創效，以社企喺亞洲嘅發展經驗，探討社企界如何透過創新帶嚟更大嘅社會效益。呢2天嘅高峰會，正係好提供一個理想嘅平台，社企可以同文學、官商共同探討合作嘅機會，凝聚跨界別嘅力量，互補長短，發揮協同嘅效應，以帶嚟更深更遠嘅社會效益。政府係積極推動社企持續發展嘅，一直吸納不同界別嘅意見，喺政策上配合，營造有利社企發展嘅環境。我哋喺2010年開始成立嘅社企諮詢委員會以嚟，已經開展咗多項嘅工作，包括透過平台組織為社企提供支援、訓練、資助相關機構就社企嘅發展同埋相關嘅議題進行研究。我哋會繼續透過委員會同埋各界集思廣益，討論社企發展嘅方針同埋措施。我亦都想藉此機會介紹我哋今年另外2項嘅工作。今年嘅6月，民政事務總署推出伙伴倡自強社區協作計劃優化嘅措施，除咗繼續提供資金協助成立新社企，亦都資助已經營運嘅社企擴充業務，令表現良好嘅社企可以進一步擴大佢哋嘅社會效益。計劃亦都開放俾兼具社企同埋商界經驗嘅人士申請，務求吸引更多有實際商業運作經驗嘅有心人參與社企嘅發展。此外，我哋喺下個月開始將會正式推出一項為期2年嘅試驗計劃，推動非政府機構同埋社企合作，為殘疾人士、少數族裔同埋長者 喺社企提供實地嘅培訓，以提升參加者嘅工作技能同埋日後獲聘嘅機會。我哋已經委任咗3個非政府機構合作推行呢一個嘅計劃。佢哋總結經驗後，會製作訓練指引俾其他嘅企業參考，鼓勵更多嘅僱主聘用弱勢社群。香港社企近年發展迅速，數目由2008年大概係260間，增長超過1倍，到目前超過570間。社企嘅業務種類同埋社會目標亦都漸趨多元化，令人鼓舞。我哋未來會繼續透過各項嘅措施，從提供資助、促進跨界別協作、協助社企提升能力，同埋加強公眾認識呢4個嘅範疇咧，多管齊下支持社企。我相信喺大家嘅共同努力之下，本地嘅社企界能夠繼續穩步發展，惠及社群。我祝願社企民間高峰會同埋亞洲社企國際會議圓滿成功，各位喺呢2日嘅會議取得豐碩嘅收穫。多謝各位，多謝。
再次感謝民政事務局局長劉江華先生，唔該，劉局長。好，咁我哋咧跟住落嚟咧就係我哋嘅開幕儀式啦。咁但係開幕儀式之前咧，我哋咧就俾大家睇一睇咧，其實頭先籌委會主席Dr. Jane Lee 李正儀博士都講過咧，其實我哋有好多位做地區論壇嘅即係叫做地區主席。咁我哋啲地區主席咧搞咗好多個論壇嘅。5月1號嘅即係街坊墟開幕禮就係深水埗嘅論壇啦。咁就張益倫先生就揾咗好多學生去第一次嘗試下做生意啦，透過社企呢個平台。咁另外Rebecca 啦 ，Rebecca 喺邊啊？我哋呢度一家人咁樣噶。Rebecca 咧就搞咗好多個論壇噶啦，南區第3次搞。咁啲漁民咧又表演跳漁民嘅舞啊，漁民點結婚啊。咁嚟緊仲拜託你仲有個中西區論壇嘅。咁亦都有Ian喺邊啊？Ian 咧亦都有幫手搞咗好多個論壇。咁我哋見到每次嘅論壇其實都有好多地區人參與嘅，咁就希望可以細水長流。咁除此之外咧，我哋今年亦都係好榮幸多謝即係Dr. Katie Chan 就將第4屆亞洲社企國際會議，我哋每2年1度咧就嚟到香港啦。咁所以咧，我哋就今次咧就將一個巨型嘅地球儀擺咗喺度，就希望全世界嘅人咧都可以匯聚喺香港。咁我唔好轉住，一轉咧一陣間咧嗰個儀式就開始㗎啦嚇。咁不如咁啦，我哋不如先請李正儀博士籌委會主席先上台先。咁另外咧就香港社會創業論壇主席張益倫先生，第4屆亞洲社企國際會議籌委會主席陳錦棠博士。咁同埋咧，我哋出邊咧好熱鬧嘅攤檔啊，等住開幕啦，等住打泰拳啊，就有香港女工商及專業人員聯會副會長簡吳秋玉女士 Helen。另外我哋3位社區論壇嘅主席都啱啱到咗步啦，咁分別係社企民間高峰會中西區社區論壇主席容蔡美碧女士，社企民間高峰會嘅副主席屯門區嘅社區論壇主席黃英琦女士 Ada 最近亦都幫我哋 line up 咗一個即係民間嘅社企咧，就香港原來有陶淵明嘅後人啊，咁啊帶咗我哋去睇香港喺屯門區嘅桃花源。另外社企民間高峰會南區社區論壇主席李志輝先生 Ian。最後請大家以熱烈嘅掌聲再次歡迎我哋嘅主禮嘉賓，香港特別行政區民政事務局局長劉江華先生上台。好，局長企喺Alan嗰邊好嘛？好啦。所有人都嚟晒香港，咁不如將隻手摸住個地球啦，好唔好啊？好，摸住個地球，摸住個地球。咁我哋一齊咧就咁樣轉，向嗰邊轉。局長都係向嗰邊轉，都係嗰邊轉。預備，我哋一齊數好嘛？今年我哋第9屆由9開始數落去啦，好嘛？數落去少少，因為好多人，慢慢影，慢慢影。好，嗱由9開始數落去，預備，9、8、7、6、5、4、3、2、1，社企民間高峰會2016正式啟動，將會由今日9月24號到明天早上9月25號。緊隨嘅咧就係世界社會企業論壇，亦都係由聽日嘅下晝去到星期2嘅。好啦，咁繼續影相嘅時候咧，我都想請2位今日嘅開幕典禮嘅主講嘉賓上台大合照嘅。 I would also like to invite our two keynote speakers for today. 瑞典艾爾塔申達勒大學學院公民社會研究學學院教授 Victor 柏斯多夫 Professor Victor Pestoff, please. 聯合國社會發展研究所研究聯合主任 Dr. Pascal van Griethuysen. Dr. Pascal, please. 好，咁我哋每年都係3張大合照㗎啦，咁啊先請。OK， 我哋講芝士啊 ，Say cheese。OK， 好啦，現在請咁多位嘉賓留步 ，Please remain on stage. May I now invite our brain of the whole IPSC week， 民政事務局副局長，我哋成個香港國際慈善及社企周嘅大佬啊，許曉輝，俾啲掌聲啊 Florence， 多謝晒佢，親力親為。好，好啊，攝影師，跟住咧，我哋要你讓一讓路啊，因為我想影一張咧，就係所有嘅籌委會成員都可以上台嚟一張大合照。所有嘅贊助嘉賓啦，另外我都想特別多謝我哋嘅贊助商以外咧，其實都感謝啊李忠德博士多年嚟嘅支持，作為我哋嘅顧問。咁啊，李博士上嚟啊 ，KK 啊上台咯，上台咯，上台咯。咁我哋今日啊，周教授啊，係。咁另外我哋今日亦都好開心咧，社企民間高峰會一開始嘅時候咧，其實都有佢幫手嘅。咁今日咧佢都會作為我哋嘅回應嘉賓。Francis， 不如你都上台影張相啊！嚟啊嚟啊嚟！誒，仲有誒，阿 Jimmy 喺嗰邊上 ，Jimmy 喺嗰邊上 ，Jimmy 喺嗰邊上，係啦，慢慢唔急 ，Jimmy 喺嗰邊上，係啦。好，咁啊，社企民間高峰會咧，今年個主題咧就係社會創新在亞洲，從創意到創效。Social innovation in Asia, from creativity to social impact。咁咧，因為今年係第4屆亞洲社企國際會議咧，我都翻查咗好多論文啊。咁有啲論文咧，原來佢哋定義 creativity、定義創意咧，又同定義呢一個創造有啲唔同嘅喎。嗱，創意咧原來咧就淨係講個意念嘅啫，一啲新嘅想法能夠咧係好 appropriate 可以應用到嘅。咁但係執行上面咧，就要靠社會企業啦，咁所以咧就點樣由創意到創效，可以製造到 impact。好，我哋不如好，我哋今年係第9屆，咁不如先影個9字好嘛？第9屆啊，第9屆係冇乜相咁影嘅嚇，咁啊多啲得意啲嘅 group photo。唔係張 group photo 好 V 字，好似年年都第2屆咁啊！如果唔係第4屆，2+2，好。另外我哋展望第10屆咯喎，咁點啊？你有冇10隻手指先？有啦，好啦，好 ，Jimmy， 我哋hi say 10 high five。高峰會係好開心嘅嚇，年年都熱鬧鬧，多謝晒，未拜拜住㗎。你拜拜住嘅，好啦，咁啊有請咁多位嘉賓，可以嘅話喺台中間或者你哋嘅右手邊，慢慢返回座位就座。多謝晒咁多位。Thank you very much for our two speakers, Professor Victor Pestoff and Dr. Pascal van Griethuysen. 好。多謝 Bosco， 多謝 Jimmy， 多謝 KK， 多謝 Jane， 多謝局長。好，咁我哋今日咧，我哋仲有第2個開幕儀式嘅，咁因為趁大家好人齊，咁啊今日俾我哋登記人數咧就多咗，因為好多人咧就 walk in 入嚟啊，咁所以如果即係頭先我哋啱啱喺後邊加緊凳俾你哋㗎啦嚇，咁非常之感謝，咁啊俾我哋過往嘅開幕典禮仲多人嚟咗，非常之開心。咁咧，我哋今日咧就11點鐘就會有個嘉年華會，叫 Let's See 行行企企嘅，咁咧就今日嘅11點開始啦，同埋聽日嘅11點一路到5點鐘左右。咁呢個社會企業嘉年華會咧就有啲新穎啲嘅項目啦，亦都咧就融會貫通啦。咁就有一啲新嘅舊嘅項目咧，有啲新嘅演進嘅。咁究竟成個諗法係點嘅咧？咁而家事不宜遲啦，我哋有請香港女工商及專業人員聯會，即係成個行行企企社企嘉年華嘅幕後功臣啊！咁啊，拜託副會長簡吳秋玉女士咧，同大家簡介下我哋嘅 Let's See 行行企企社企嘉年華。唔該晒 Helen。
許局長、李博士，大家朋友早晨。其實咧今日咧，我能夠有機會咧代表呢個女工商及專業人員聯會咧喺呢度係恭賀社企民間高峰會咧，今年又再係有一次咧係更加成功嘅會議咧，我哋感到好榮幸嚇。咁其實咧，女工商及專業人員聯會咧係一班大約有100多人嘅女士咧，其實佢哋係唔同嘅工商同埋專業嘅界別咧。我哋有一個共通嘅點，就係我哋創立咗20年以嚟咧，我哋都係關心社會，對好多政府嘅政策咧都係有回應。咁更加重要嘅咧，其實我哋係好想同埋好希望咧係做好多社會服務嘅。咁所以咧，我哋喺呢個社企民間高峰會咧，9年前咧，2008年一開始嘅時候咧，我哋都好榮幸咧係有支持同埋係贊助。咁今年咧，大家咧就見到一個好新嘅模式喎。呢個好新嘅模式咧，其實我哋喺參與嘅時候咧，一路搞嘅時候咧，我哋自己都好興奮嘅。咁呢個咧就係 SE 行行企企嘅工作坊啦。咁其實咧，我喺呢度咧要特別多謝咧今年參加呢個 SE 行行企企工作坊嘅社企同埋 NGO。咁佢哋咧分別就有係創意聯盟、香港善道會、香港基督教女青年會、協青社、精英社有限公司、藝傳人創作有限公司、Eden Ministry、鄧樹榮戲劇工作室、青年廣場、東華三院同埋香港女童軍總會。咁其實咧聽落咧呢啲名咧唔講你哋唔知，其實咧包含嘅內容咧大細即係一家大細咩年紀嘅朋友咧都可以係參與呢個社企而家可以喺社會上提供嘅服務㗎啦。咁啊包括咧有運動啦、音樂啦、藝術啦、舞蹈啦、戲劇啦、兒童粵劇啦、手工嘅製作啦，同埋首飾同埋工藝品咁樣樣。咁所以咧今日咧呢個活動咧其實真係好多元化嘅。喺呢度咧就想即係祝願其實社企嘅發展咧喺香港喺未來更加有活力、更加有創意，同埋最重要嘅咧就係要有呢個經濟同埋社會嘅效益。多謝晒，同埋恭喜大家，恭喜。
好 ，Helen， 請留步啊！咁啊，你固然係大佬啦，同埋個脊骨啊撐住啦，你仲有對左手同右手今日嚟咗啊！就係成個行行企企嘅，即係幕後出拳嗰個，係佢哋真係落手落腳嘅。咁我哋不如請佢出嚟啦，好嘛？
好啊，好啊。
係阿 Ann 同 Sylvia， 阿 Ann 同 Sylvia 喺邊？
Ann 同 Sylvia。
哇！阿 Ann 同 Sylvia， 有冇人帶個拳？有冇人帶個拳套上社企民間高峰會啊 ？Dr. Lee。
我哋女工商嘅會員個個都係有心有力啊！
嚇。其實咧，成個香港國際慈善及社企周好多奇人奇事嘅。咁啊，大家都知我除咗做社企之外，我亦都有做電台啦，有做電視台啦。咁我都一定咧，成個禮拜發生嘅事咧，大大小小我都記低晒佢啦。咁啊，將來咧將啲奇人奇事咧，就同大家喺節目度分享翻。咁有啲都好搞笑下嘅。咁但係你哋今日兩個，我唔敢叫你搞笑啊，係咪？你擺咗個 pose 影相先啦，唉，擺咗個 pose 影相先啦。佢哋咧呢一個打泰拳嘅社企咧，其實就係會請一啲更新嘅後生仔。咁咧就佢哋話有好多更新嘅後生仔咧，未更新期間咧好打得㗎喎。咁佢哋話既然咁打得咧，唔好浪費咗佢啦， 就不如出嚟咧就幫呢一間咧就優秀嘅泰拳嘅拳社咧做訓練。咁你既然咁打得咧，咁就不如嚟訓練啦。咁有啲嘢佢哋唔肯講嘅，我有啲朋友都已經知道呢間社企咧，佢話咁打得，梗係揾呢啲教練啦咁樣。咁所以咧就將一啲負面嘅嘢咧就變咗做啲正面嘅嘢。好，哇！攝影師影完未？我拉布拉咗好耐㗎啦喎，到我講。好啦，咁咧我哋，你都帶埋啊？哇！咁快嘅，時間關係，佢哋3位都帶咗拳到啦。咁我哋一齊，不如你不如你教下點出拳啊！嗱，我哋一齊啟動呢一個社企儀式。點啊？我哋係直拳定 uppercut 啊？嚇？直拳咧就係咁出。左直拳係。右直拳啊，係扭腰係。咁要透條腰嚇。咁 uppercut 係點啊？都係下邊嘅。哇！好驚。係。以後我靠你哋保護我。嚇，好嘛？我哋好啊！好啦，我哋3位啊，咁咧就啱啱係 Helen 啊、Ann 同 Sylvia， 英文就係 HAS。我哋有嘅人咧，喺香港有嘅人咧，要俾多啲 has not 嘅人，唔好 has 嘅人咧變得越嚟越多，係嘛？has 俾 has not 嘅人咧，我諗都係其中一個社企精神，用我哋嘅 social capital 啦，係咪？其實每個人都有好多嘢嘅，即係問題係你攬幾多㗎啫？你攬住嗰樣嘢死唔放嘅話咧，你就唔覺得自己 has， 成日覺得自己唔夠，係嘛？好啦，咁我不如你哋排好出右直拳、左直拳定 uppercut 未啊？決定未啊？唔好一陣間隊形唔整齊喎，我又要你再打一個喎。你使唔使望住一個目標容易啲，好似容易啲易啲打咁樣係嘛？嗱，望住個攝影師打啦嚇，望住個攝影師打啦。唉，你唔好好似望住阿 Alan 咁樣喎。好，預備，未得啊！我要數3、2、1啊，攝影師。係啊，有啲動感嗰啲啦，好嗎？好，預備，一齊數啦，好嗎 ？Ready, 3, 2, 1。好啦，出拳之際咧，我哋2個嘉賓陪佢上台咯。阿 Florence， 做社企要拳拳到肉嚇，要有 impact 啊！喂，好。最近如果你有睇電視或者聽收音機咧，你都會聽到啊林奕匡嘅聲音。第一俾掌聲，林奕匡。好啦，咁呢首歌係咩歌咧？英文叫做 Here We Are。咁阿 Florence 你又係呢首歌個幕後推手嚟㗎喎，係嘛？
呢首歌咧係好有意義嘅，因為咧其實喺舊年咧，我哋民政事務總署咧為到整體我哋社企嘅宣傳咧，就請咗林奕匡先生呢一位我哋香港青年嘅唱作歌手咧，幫我哋就社企咧就係創作咗首主題曲，係非常非常貼題嘅。佢裡面嘅內容咧聽咗都會讓大家非常嘅感動。
咁你最中意？請留意歌詞嘅話，你覺得要留意邊句歌詞咧？
請留意歌詞嗱，佢自己嘅歌名咧 Here We Are 咧，佢中文咧都已經係非常有意義㗎啦，就係社企跟你來一起進步。咁而且咧，佢係裡面提到社企咧係努力做強，係為咗咩咧？就係共同去發掘世間的美好，讓我哋嘅社會咧係更精彩、更無阻。佢仲提到咧，我哋點樣去做到咧？就係靠每顆心做到。同埋呢，就係有愛方可做到，就係將我哋社企咧嗰份關愛嘅精神咧，好淋漓盡致咁樣咧，喺個主題曲裏邊咧就帶到出嚟。所以我哋都好感謝咧林奕匡先生嘅。要
有心做啊嚇，總之啊，做社企要有心做。阿康，因為我成日喺電台見到佢嘅，咁啊阿康啦，我叫你係嘛？
好啊。
係，其實我真名都叫阿康嘅，不過唔係嗰個康，係。不過啲人成日叫我阿永，我係照應咁解嘅。啊，唔緊要，阿林奕匡，你自己又最中意邊句歌詞咧？
其實呢隻歌，我覺得裏好多份歌詞，即係句子都好有，即係好有佢嘅意思。我就同意嘅，即係講個心嗰個愛先可以做得到呢件事，我覺得非常之啱啦。社企跟你來一起進步咧，係寫得好白，但係而且確，我覺得我自己都感受過嘅。因為嗰陣時記得有探訪過一啲唔同嘅社企啦，亦都去參與少少活動啦，即係見到一啲可能喺社會上可能會被忽略少少嘅人嘅群體啦，係有機會俾佢哋可以去即係發掘自己啊， 得到自信啦，亦都得大家嘅鼓掌啦，我覺得係非常之有意義嘅。
咦？咁你真係為咗唱好首歌，你落地嘅喎，你要感受下呢件事嘅喎，即係
落地㗎，直情係喺度。
咁
我有份種菜㗎。
你有份種菜？你去咗參觀啲咩社企度？去咗啲咩地方？
嗰陣係嗰個農田嗰度㗎嘛。
哦，你落咗田添啊？
係啊。
哇！咁有心。
嗰棵菜好靚㗎，我睇過嗰個大廣告咧，棵菜咧仲大過，即係仲搶眼過我個樣嘅係。
係啊，咁啊，所以。有心人唱有心歌啦！大家俾啲掌聲啊！林奕匡、Florence 同埋女工商專聯嘅呢位代表。攝影師要求咧，頭先出拳咧，你係快得滯啊！佢話不如趁副局長同埋林奕匡喺度咧，都出拳啦，好唔好啊？你哋攞住支咪右手出拳啦，好嘛？好嗱，對住攝影師，嗰個閃光燈嗰度，最閃光燈出拳得㗎啦！預備1、2、3，
個拳低啲。
1、2、3，好啦。好多謝阿 Helen、阿 Anne、阿 Sylvia 同埋阿 Florence 請就座。好，請就座，請就座。喂，阿康，咁你最開心參觀完之後，你最大得着係啲咩咧？其實最大得着係嗰個感覺咯，係同埋識得種菜啦，係嘛？係啊，識得種菜之餘咧，係我覺得係即係喺呢個 program 裏邊咧，我睇到一啲嘅笑容啊。我覺得其實我工作我最開心，我覺得最滿意嘅部分就係可以睇見一來帶到歡樂俾大家，亦都可以睇到大家嘅笑容嘅時候，我覺得呢個工作真係好正，所以亦都非常之多謝社企俾個機會俾我去做呢隻歌啦。我覺得都係即係我哋做音樂其實講係除咗係工作之外咧，其實係真係唔係淨係咁簡單嘅。我希望係真係可以做到啲嘢，我覺得有啲 reason， 即係我喺加拿大出世長大，點解要翻嚟香港？因為其實唔係淨係簡簡單單中意音樂咁簡單咯，係我覺得希望想做啲嘢，而係你中意香港啊嘛，亦都係冇錯。俾啲掌聲啊，林奕匡。所以咧，我喺度都俾啲掌聲大家。其實無論做學術研究啦，定係做社會企業咧，其實都係近排好興呢5個字嘅，粒粒皆辛苦嘅嚇。咁所以咧就希望大家俾啲掌聲啊，林奕匡。Here we are at the Social Enterprise Summit. Let's work together for a better Hong Kong. 林奕匡 ，Here we are. Thank you.
呢邊朋友你好嗎 ？Hello。走出小街，感覺每一天，在這寬廣世間碰見，即使身份不一，都確信彼此各有方式作出貢獻。叢林蜜蜂觸碰什麼法？同行並肩總會成長嗎？讓我們亦努力嗎 ？Here we are， 社企跟你來一起進步，我們的創意跟你隨優點探討，縱是渺小壯大變強。發掘世間的美好 ，Here we are， 由愛放開，做到一起支撐，總會撐得起。大喊一聲，永不放棄。於多低的低谷，都會有轉機，定會找到半點勇氣。如能互相依靠，幸福嗎？同行並肩總會成長嗎？讓我們別再孤單。社企跟你來一起進步，我們的創意跟你隨優點探討，縱是渺小壯大變強，發掘世間的美好。Here we are， 由愛到好，看來途太遠，路途不清楚，陪伴你去找遠方的曙光，送上懷抱。為
民間生火來讓世界更精彩更無阻。Here we are， 社企跟你來一起進步，看誰都各有輕重，隨優點探討。社企跟你來一起進步，我們的創意跟你、來攀得更高，縱是渺小努力變強，發掘世間的美好。Here we are， 做到。Here we are， 社企跟你來一起進步。
喂，俾個5啊！好多謝林永康 ，Thank
you
you very much。好美麗嘅歌聲。每一年社企民間高峰會都有表演嘅項目啦。咁啊，舊年咧我哋就好感謝阿 Florence 介紹咗藝傳人俾我哋識啦。咁啊，另外亦都有一班咧喺元水村啊嘅小朋友咧就去表演呢一個弦樂嘅即係弦樂團 String Orchestra。咁啊，再加埋咧有一個失明人士彈琴。咁我哋希望大家每一年都中意我哋嘅表演啦。咁就跟住落嚟咧，我都想提一提大家。For those who want simultaneous interpretation services who need the SI machines, we have a few extras at the back. Can I have a show of hands? Because I thought the SI area is full. If you need, oh, there's one over there. All right, just one. Good, perfect, good planning. Anyway, to begin, let me give you some background. 其實世界民間高峰會咧第一屆之後咧，每一年我哋都有一個主題嘅。咁因為好多時候我哋聽到官商民合作啦，咁但係世界民間高峰會咧就強調係四範嘢嘅，官商民學，好似我哋個標誌咁。咁呢四範嘢咧其實都係四把火嚟嘅。咁咧我哋每個人內心都有一團火。咁啊當然啦我記得我第一年嚟幫手進入財委會咧，當年就希望多啲官員嚟參加嘅，因為咧就最初咧就講得個可 Florence， 最初咧第一屆社企民間高峰會咧係有3個官員嚟嘅，3個官員嚟。咁但係舊年咧就已經有237個官員嚟咗啦。咁啊非常之多謝，其實係 all levels 啊，即係由常秘級去到前線嘅同事都有。咁啊好開心，咁我哋嗰年咧就希望多啲即係社會創新咧，在政府入邊，在即係個政治世界入邊。咁跟住咧就輪到文咯喎。咁啊文點樣咧？咁啊第二屆嘅時候咧，就阿 Alan 啊 Rebecca 話唔得喎，要喺地下做啦，要喺地下做啦。咁啊於是乎咧就我哋嘅籌委會就話不如去灣仔修頓球場搞開幕典禮啦，貼近啲民間啦。咁然之後過條橋咧就嚟到會展呢度啦。咁當年就搞咗好多個即係地區論壇啦。咁啊 Ada 就話不如高峰會嗰日咧幾個論壇咧就聚埋一齊。咁咧於是乎咧我哋咧就再搞埋一個咧叫 Hong Kong Jam 嘅活動。咁啊希望年輕人咧都嚟參與。咁啊年輕人就喺動漫基地嗰邊搞嘅。咁今年我哋個 Hong Kong Jam 搞到第3屆咧，就喺我哋另外一個即係co-creation 嘅基地喺 Good Lab 度搞啦。咁就年輕人同埋我哋咧，好似喺即係個衛星咁樣咧，互相喺度互相用引力去影響啊。咁啊官民之後咧就到商界啦。咁舊年咧其實個台上邊咧，我哋請到阿徐永光啦，亦都徐永光今年再嚟啦。馬會覺得佢好正咁啊，於是乎再請佢嚟做2日嘅論壇再講啦。咁於是乎咧就好有趣嘅，即係其實喺 SES 請過嘅人咧，其實喺其他論壇會繼續請佢嚟香港度繼續講嘅。咁就我哋成日都話社企係唔怕人抄嘅，最好你抄多啲，證明我係做得好。最好社企啊，呢個 Francis 講嘅 ，Francis 話最好你抄晒添，全香港所有企業。阿 KK 話間間企業抄晒社企。仲好係嘛？間間企業都係有良心嘅企業係嘛？咁所以呢個我哋都覺得好嘅。咁啊另外商界咧，我哋 B Corp 咧今年再提升一個台階啦。我哋嘅閉幕典禮咧2個都係世界公認嘅 B Corp 嘅大師。咁琴日亦都喺即係兩岸4地論壇有好有趣嘅討論。唔緊要， miss 咗都唔緊要嘅嚇，因為我聽日個閉幕典禮咧，你千祈唔好 miss，記得要嚟嚇。咁另外仲有個大師班啊，咁啊大師班都係可以深入討論、研討下官民商，今年點都要學啦，係嘛？官民商學，官民商學。咁所以今年咧，感謝阿 KT 將第4屆亞洲社企國際會議咧，終於送到嚟香港，多謝你啊 KT， 好辛苦。因為 KT 咧點辛苦法咧 ？KT 琴日直情要喺大堂度咧等啲學者嚟接佢，跟住送佢去唔同嘅地方。因為學者有個特色嘅，係唔覆 email 嘅，唔覆 email 嘅，所以 KT 咧一定要 personal touch 啊。咁咧，而且佢仲要即係接阿黃明博士過嚟，因為同一時間咧，其實喺深圳都有個慈善會，咁啊有我哋好多嘉賓咧要兩地奔跑。所以其實咧，我覺得都係要快啲有高鐵㗎啦，即係都你可以快啲將嗰啲社企生意咧就快啲嚟到呢度。好啦，咁我哋講完個開場白之後咧，今日我哋有2位咧都係學界做社會創新、做社會企業研究咧，都幾乎一定聽過嘅名。幾乎你查 social enterprise 嗰啲學術論文度咧，呢個名一定會彈出嚟嘅。咁咧就係瑞典艾爾塔申達勒大學學院公民社會研究學院教授。Professor Victor Pestoff is going to share with us his insight in social enterprise and share with us his learning throughout the years. May I have a very big hand to Professor Victor Pestoff, please? Welcome, Professor. Welcome to Hong Kong. It's our honor to have you here.
Thank you very much for this very innovative reception. I've attended many conferences, but not quite had the good quality entertainment we've been provided with here. So it's a great privilege and honor for me to be here today. I see my, I'm not sure if you can see the PowerPoint because I'm put right in front of it. Can anybody see this PowerPoint? Okay, good. Okay. Today I want to talk to you about a special kind of social innovation, an innovation that's related to greater citizen participation, to what might be called democratic innovation. I'll explain what this means throughout my presentation. And the purpose of my presentation today is to explore some synergies between 3 post-new public management concepts for reforming the public sector. Because I think all of us sitting here would agree the public sector is in need of reforms. But the question is, how do we do this? Do we do this through the market? Do we do it through civil society? Do we do it through greater client and citizen participation? And this is what I'll be addressing today. This is an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I won't have time to go into detail in every one of these things, I'm afraid, but I'll walk you through these in my presentation. First of all, a little background on nonprofit organizations and new public management. Introduction, what the impact of new public management has been on the nonprofit sector, particularly in Scandinavia. An introduction to some of the scholars and theorists, Elinor Ostrom, Nobel Prize winner in 2009, Paul Hirsch, the OECD, Stephen Osborne, what a few have said about the importance of this. Then I'll talk about social enterprise briefly, social innovation, particularly in the public sector, and finally a concept that Elinor Ostrom introduced and worked with in the 1970s, 1980s, long before she got the Nobel Prize, a concept called co-production, sometimes in French called co-creation. And then finally, I'll reach some conclusions. The scholars have traditionally attributed an important role to the nonprofit sector or the third sector. De Tocqueville talked about the third sector at nonprofit organizations as schools of democracy. More recently, Robert Putnam talked about the importance of third sector organizations and membership for making democracy work. in Italy in the early 80s. But then a few years later, he seemed to become somewhat discouraged and dissuaded when he returned to America and looked at the phenomena of bowling alone. So no longer were citizens joining together, forming bowling clubs and bowling together, but they were bowling all by themselves, competing against a machine. And more recently from America, we talk about checkbook memberships, where you don't meet any other members, you just sign a check once a year and send it off, and there's no social interaction, there's no social capital gained from that type of membership. The negative impact of new public management was well documented at a big international conference in Stockholm this summer, where scholars from all over the world met, scholars who are interested in the third sector and nonprofit organizations. There were over 400 registered participants there, and I attended about a dozen different sessions. And in each and every one, I could hear somebody talking about how the third sector seems to be losing out when it comes to competitive tenders. They don't have the resources necessary to prepare and compete with private companies, and they're losing ground in terms of providing public services. And let me just show you briefly an overview here. We have for Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, we have the sectors, the nonprofit sector, the commercial sector, and the public sector. And Denmark has a larger nonprofit sector, but it's been decreasing slightly from 2008 to 2013. Norway has a medium-sized nonprofit sector based on Scandinavian comparisons, and it's gained marginally, it's grown marginally in terms of providing welfare services, but in Sweden it stood still. The interesting change has been the growth of the commercial or the for-profit sector, particularly in Sweden, where we see a rather rapid growth. So the third sector seems to be losing out to the commercial sector or the for-profit sector under a new public management regime. So there's a growing realization among scholars that perhaps we've reached the limits of new public management. Yes, it brought with it many benefits, but it also has some problems that haven't been resolved successfully. So we're talking about what could possibly replace new public management. Today I'm going to talk about three strong candidates, three post-new public management concepts: social enterprise, which you're all very familiar with; social innovation, which you probably know more about than I do; and co-production, which has been the topic I've been focusing on for the last 10 or 15 years. These concepts have much in common, and together they can contribute to a more coherent post-new public management strategy for developing, democratizing, and innovating society. So I've already showed you this from a third sector perspective, from a scholar who's devoted his entire life to studying the third sector. Already from the start of my PhD work in the last century, up until today, I've been studying the third sector, and it's rather discouraging to see that the third sector doesn't seem to be advancing, doesn't seem to be growing and expanding. Now, is it because they don't have innovations? Perhaps, but it could be for other reasons too. So there's three main dimensions in each of these three post-new public management concepts: social enterprise, social innovation, and co-production. Each one has quite clearly a social dimension, they have an economic dimension, but they also have a political dimension. But I don't mean political in terms of party politics, I mean it more in terms of encouraging citizens to participate in these organizations. And I'll say a bit more about co-production today because it's a newer concept that perhaps not many of you are familiar with. Co-production was initially developed by Elinor Ostrom, who is a fantastic scholar, and to my mind, the only one to win 2 Nobel Prizes, or the equivalent of 2 Nobel Prizes in the social sciences. Already in 1990, she won the prize in political science, which is named after the house where the professor of political science lives in Uppsala, and where political science was first taught as a separate discipline already in the late 1700s. And this is called the Skytteanenpriset, which is named after this particular house where, as I say, still today the professor lives there, and this is where he meets all his PhD students. She won that prize in political science in the year 2000, and then in the year 2009 she won the Nobel Prize in economics, primarily for her work on common pool resources, and I won't go into details on that, but she was a very influential, very important scholar, and the one who introduced this concept of co-production. A British scholar by the name of Paul Hurst emphasizes that governance implies the need for regulating and controlling big organizations, both in the public and private sector. In other words, he has a very clear bias for small rather than big organizations. And the OECD, in a recent policy document, bringing together representatives from all of the member countries, had a report on co-production, and it says that it considers co-production to be a major social innovation. And finally, my colleague and friend Stephen Osborne at the University of Edinburgh now regards co-production as a key concept in something called new public governance. I don't think, I have a brief slide on that, but I don't think time will allow me to talk about that in detail because I want to share a few examples with you. So social enterprises, the general view of in the public debate is that it ranges from almost anything goes, where perhaps McDonald's or Walmart or even J.R. Reynolds could be considered a social enterprise as long as they have a corporate social report every year. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, we have the almost nothing qualifies, and this is the more bureaucratic view of social enterprise rather than the market view. So in most European countries, the bureaucracy has given social enterprise an official definition that suits its policy aims. So here we see in many countries that unemployment has been a big problem, and the bureaucrats have decided that social enterprise is nothing more than work integration social enterprises. So the type of phenomena that I've looked at in my own research, previously looking at cooperative child care in Sweden, now I'm looking at cooperative health care and elder care in Japan. This wouldn't qualify, only this very narrow definition. And that really makes the debate very difficult. The academic discourse has varied between these two extremes. Anything goes, nothing qualifies. But with the evolution of the European perspective, in particular with the efforts of the EMES organization that I'm one of the founding members of, we've been able to propose 9 criteria as ideal type criteria. Perhaps not all of them are found in any particular organization, but we've been able to propose 9 criteria and develop it down to, or narrow it down to 3 dimensions, again, an economic, a political, and a social dimension for social enterprise. And when we had our second summer school for PhD students for the MS in Roskilde a few years ago, we took an afternoon off to attend the Roskilde Music Festival. And my friend and colleague Lars Hulgaard told everyone that he thought the Roskilde Music Festival was one of the few examples in Denmark that actually fulfilled all 9 of these criteria. And we had quite an enjoyable time listening to the music, and you could sit on a bicycle and pump, and you could generate the energy for the swimming pool that people were using, so they didn't have an electrical apparatus or a combustible apparatus to warm it up. You could sit on the bicycle and pump away, and that was quite enjoyable. We had a great time there. So we have a more coherent idea, and these criteria, we argue, are very interrelated. So you can't just focus on the economic, you can't just focus on the social, nor can you just focus on the political, but they lock into each other and they support each other. And more recently, Lars Hulgaard and myself have written an article that's just published in the journal Voluntas that I'm sure many of you might be familiar with, where we reassess the importance of governance that's often been ignored or been missing in much of the earlier discussion of the MS project, but is coming more to the forefront now as we're gaining more and more recognition for the importance of this particular dimension. I just briefly have the criteria for the European Social Business Initiative, specifying very clearly an entrepreneurial definition, a social definition defined by the aims and or the service delivered, but also a governance dimension. The means, how do we go about doing this? Do we do it with one or two people directing everything, or do we try to involve the various stakeholders in the decision-making, but also in the implementation of what we'd like to do? And the European Union Social Business Initiative does put a lot of emphasis also on the governance dimension, just to underline the importance of it for social enterprise. Social innovation in the public sector, the traditional view is that innovation is something like they do in manufacturing, something that's new, something that's different. But it's not always service relevant. And in particular, my own interest, my own research has been on the provision of social services, child care, elder care, education, handicap care, health care to some extent. And the concepts borrowed from manufacturing don't always apply, and certainly don't apply 100% to the provision of services. Like, you can't produce them at a separate geographical site and then transport them elsewhere. Services are usually produced with a lot of interaction between the provider and the consumer, and that also means you can't provide them and store them on a shelf to be taken out a year later and distributed. They're very interpersonal, interrelational. So the concepts, the traditional view of innovation in the public sector doesn't really fit very well. The European Union also argues that social innovation should be social both in its ends and its means, just like the European Union's social business initiative. It's fine to have a good goal, a good purpose, but how do you go about doing it? Do you actually involve the stakeholders in this? And governance reflects the issues of changing relations between the professional providers and the users, and it promotes greater citizen participation and co-production. In other words, how can we get the citizens involved in their own elder care, in their own child care, in their own health care? Do we just have the professionals who come and provide it with little interaction, little dialogue between the professionals and the receivers of these services? Or do we try to involve the users in a more active fashion? So even in terms of public sector innovation, many of my colleagues are now recognizing that governance issues are important. There's going to be a changing role. The public professionals, the civil servants, will be facilitating the provision of these services, and the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector and individual citizens will be involved in co-producing them. So the government will no longer be responsible for producing all of these services. Turning to co-production, Elinor Ostrom was a pioneer in defining co-production and later became a Nobel Prize winner. She analyzed the role of citizens in the provision of public services in terms of co-production. She says citizens have various roles that can be played out individually or collectively or sometimes together with others. She developed the term co-production to describe the potential relationship that could exist between regular producers like street-level police officers, school teachers, or health workers, and their clients who want to be transformed into safer, better educated, or healthier persons. Co-production is therefore defined as a mix of activities that both public service agents and citizens can contribute to the provision of public services. The former are involved as professional or regular producers, while citizen production is based on voluntary efforts to enhance the quality or quantity of services they provide and receive. So you could ask, well, why should the citizens take any responsibility? Why should they engage themselves? Why should they devote their time and effort to the services? And the simple answer is that they would like to be able to influence the service quality in a positive fashion. Or they want to make sure that public cutbacks don't remove the service from the area where they happen to reside or happen to receive their service. So better quality, higher quality, and quantity of services is the main motive for citizens in terms of co-production. A few conceptual issues that co-production can either be individuals, it can be collective action, or it can be both. So, for example, I assume you're familiar with this concept of parent-teacher organization, where teachers become involved in the education for their children. Parents will be responsible, of course, for making sure their kids go to bed in time in the evening, they do their homework before they go to bed, getting them up, make sure they have breakfast before sending them off to school, make sure they have their books with them. So this is the individual act of co-production in terms of education, basic education. But some parents will join together to participate in the PTA, and oftentimes the PTA, at least from an American background, will involve mothers going to the classroom every day that one of the children has a birthday. There's usually 25, 30 children in a class. So they'll make sure that there's a birthday cake, there's a little celebration. So this particular child on let's say the 25th of September has his or her birthday recognized, and their very presence helps to calm down the tone level in the class. It makes it easier for the teacher to discipline or to maintain discipline. So we see a mix of both individual and collective acts. Again, there's three main dimensions in co-production: an economic dimension, a social, and a political. And the OECD in its report states that co-production is more than just consultation. It's more than just having a short talk with a focus group or something like that. They go on to say that they consider co-production as a major innovation. And my own research many years ago on alternative provision of childcare in Europe found that in France, in Germany, in Sweden, parents were very active in the provision of childcare services. This helped them also to control and regulate the quality. So the parents create associations. They receive money from the municipalities. But the parents are responsible for the board. They're also responsible for the maintenance and management. So these professionals, oftentimes women who study at the university for 3 years, take student loans, they're no better sweepers of the floor or cleaners of the windows or the chairs in the evening than the professional staff would do. So the parents go in and do these things on a rotating basis. So each family has 1 week on a rotating basis. And so if there's 15 or 20 families, that means every 15th or 20th week, it's your responsibility. You have to go in and you're responsible for the cleaning. The parents are also responsible for the bookkeeping. And the parents actually interview and hire the staff. So the parents actually have the decision on who's going to work there. And we find similar patterns, as I say, in France, in Germany, in Sweden. This isn't found everywhere, but it's found in some countries. And it does allow the parents much more control and can regulate the service. But without parent participation, without this political dimension I mentioned earlier, this wouldn't be possible. Parents are also required, when necessary, to be available if one of the staff should be sick, or if they were going to a 1 or 2 day training course. So in the municipal services, when the staff member is sick or there's a training course, they have staff shortages, and it's total chaos. And the parents who use the cooperative or associative form have often experienced municipal services and experienced the downside, experienced the negative aspects of it. So they're willing to contribute their time and their effort to join together for the 4 or 5 years that their child is in one of these, or if they have several children, maybe for up to 10 years, to devote their time and effort to providing better quality services. The services are still funded by public funds or by municipal funds, but the actual implementation is done by the parents. However, there's also been some interesting research that shows that there's a glass ceiling for participation in public services. That's to say, the public services talk very warmly about more parent involvement, more parent participation, but it seems to be at a certain level, and beyond this level, it's not possible for the parents to participate. Now, just to mention another interesting example, I'm currently involved in a project together with my colleague, Professor Saito from Osaka University, in a project on co-production in health and elder care, the Japanese model. And we're looking at 4 agricultural cooperative hospitals and 4 consumer cooperative hospitals in Japan. We just gathered our data from the staff survey, and we have over 5,000 respondents in this. So this is going to be a rather large empirical study. Now, from this, we expect to find evidence for some of our hypotheses, namely a good working environment is key to good quality services. If you have staff that goes to work every day, they hate going to work because they're so stressed, they feel so burnt out, they hate getting up, they come home, they have a pain in the neck, or they have a headache because it's so stressful, the quality of the services quite simply aren't going to be that good. And oftentimes service quality is like this concept we have concerning attraction to other people. We say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Well, good service quality is in the eyes of the consumer. The consumer himself, him or herself, will be able to determine whether it's good service quality. So therefore, it's important also to ask the consumers. And the next phase in our study is to do a patient user survey and get their impressions and then compare them with what the staff thinks. The staff will obviously be proud of their work. They'll say, yes, we do good work, it's good quality, but they have high professional standards, no doubt, but what do the consumers actually think? So this is the second part, and we're also having a third phase in this where we try to tap into the volunteers, and in particular, not only the volunteers found at the hospitals or the elder homes that we've included, but also in community. How do they mobilize other people in the community, particularly in rural communities, particularly in the small villages that are being depopulated, that have an extremely aging population? So we're also going to be using a volunteer study to try to tap into that aspect of it. So this brings me to a summary and conclusions. As I said, there's 3 main dimensions in all post-NPM concepts: an economic, a political, and a social. The EU has said that social innovations are both social in their goals and the means. Social enterprises and co-production share many of the same attributes. So what we need to do as scholars and perhaps as practitioners, and here's where we can have a dialogue with each other, we need to explore this potential synergies between these 3 concepts in order to understand them as democratic innovations. Social enterprises, social innovations, and co-production comprise major instruments for developing society, for promoting innovation and democracy, and can therefore be equated with new schools of democracy in the 21st century. A few references finally. I have flyers and a display copy of a few of these books here. The book by Jacques Dufourny, Lars Hogård, and myself on social enterprise in the 3rd sector. My most recent article with Lars Hogård in Voluntas, and a brand new book that most of the contributors to the book haven't received yet from the editor, but I asked for special privileges. I wanted to be able to share this with you here in Hong Kong. So I brought a copy of this new book about social entrepreneurship, social enterprise, a Nordic perspective, which is a collection of about 20 chapters, all written by Scandinavian Nordic authors. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Victor Pestoff. We will reserve the questions perhaps during the respondents' time. So thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you. 多謝瑞典艾爾塔申達勒大學學院公民社會研究學院教授Victor Pestoff。咁咧就跟住落嚟咧就係我哋社民間高峰好多年咧都想請到聯合國嘅代表嚟到，咁今年終於請到啦。咁啊而且咧就亦都係透過KT 嘅幫忙啦，我哋請到聯合國咧負責做研究、負責做沉澱嘅。咁喺聯合國嚟講呢個工作好重要，因為咧對聯合國嘅社會發展研究所嚟講咧，聯合國好多項目㗎嘛。你知 UN 頭嗰啲項目咧係好多個嘅，佢有個好大嘅圖表嘅。咁點樣沉澱咧？點樣將呢啲功夫沉澱咗之後變成一套理論，去推動快全球嘅社會創新咧？其實香港都有嘅，效率促進組都係做緊呢啲嘢嘅。唔同嘅政府部門點樣將佢哋嘅思考嘅過程沉澱咗啦，提升個效率啦，透過社會創新啦去一齊做。咁所以我哋喺本地嘅層次，我哋透過效率促進組早前嘅活動，我哋都了解咗啦。喺全世界嘅層次點樣做咧？咁喺我請我哋下一位嘉賓之前咧，阿 Pascal 咧就話佢有條片想播俾大家睇下先。
We live in an ever more globalized and interconnected world. We face development challenges that are complex and interlinked. In 2015, governments began responding to that complexity by adopting an integrated development agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The agenda is universal, applying to all people in all countries and leaving no one behind. It is integrated, recognizing that today's development solutions have to meet social, environmental, and economic objectives. And it is transformative in its ambition, aiming to tackle the root causes of inequality and unsustainable development. UNRWA's research can help to better understand how to achieve these visionary goals. For over 50 years, we've been exploring the intersections between the social, the economic, and the environmental, and at the same time, daring to ask difficult questions on the politics of policy change. In our 2016 flagship report, find out what UNRWA's research tells us about innovative policies that can deliver on Agenda 2030's transformative promise.
From the United Nations Research Institute of Social Development, our next speaker is Dr. Pascal Griethuysen。現在有請聯合國社會發展研究所研究部門聯絡主任柏斯高維多高斯主神先生。Over to you.
Thank you so much. Let me just check where my presentation is. Okay. Mr. Lau Kong-wah, Secretary for Home Affairs, Dr. Jane Lee, Chair of the Organization Committee, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, distinguished participants, it's an honor and privilege for me to be here on behalf of UNRWA. And as I cannot sing as the great singer we had previously, as I am not an expert in Thai boxing, I thought that showing a little trailer from our institute was a good way to introduce my speech. I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank the organizer and especially Dr. Kanton Chan, who made his best to invite me, to keep tracking me to be here today. And I'm very, very happy to be here. Today, I would like to share a little bit with you our our experience in trying to be innovative for more than 50 years within the United Nations, and our efforts to make some impact within the UN and behind. But since I guess most of you don't know anything or very little about UNRIS, let me just give you a glimpse of what our institute is. UNRIS is United Nations Research Institute for Social Development. It was founded in 1963 in Geneva, and with the exclusive mandate to make research and policy analysis on social development. What is specific to us is that we make some independent research. We gather with other elements of researcher, academics, and different practitioners. We try to mobilize new innovative thinking, critical assessment. Our mandate is to be independent. And the only way to be independent within the UN is have kind of financial autonomy from the UN budget. So the good thing is that we are autonomous in the way we do research. The bad or the counterpart is that we are totally dependent about external funding. But the way we work is mainly based on collaboration with UN bodies, of course, but also with academics and civil society practitioners and even activists. So we are a kind of place for dialogue. We have a very limited staff, about 10 people only in Geneva, with some external elements, but we also have, the way we work is based on global networks. We have networks especially of research around the world, especially in the southern part of the world, and we conduct research partnership. This has allowed us to prepare, to provide for 50 years critical assessments and innovative thinking on development issues. And we hope that we have some convening power and we have some impact. And I give you only one example on this sustainable development framework. For instance, we have been working quite hard to mention the role and the importance of considering inequality as a crucial topic in social development. And we were influential in adding inequality as one of the key goals in the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG 10. So it was not only thanks to us, but we were quite influential in having this topic as a unique goal. We are doing this kind of innovative work we try to do is mainly based on two elements. First is research, and then it's trying to make a policy uptake of this research through convening power and institutional strategy. So I will first focus a little bit on the research we have been doing. We have been doing a lot of work, a lot of different type of research, but what we do is that periodically UNRIS publish what we call flagship reports, which make a recognized mark on development debates by synthesizes the latest cutting-edge research on social development, and by providing policymakers, researchers, practitioners, and activists with reliable evidence for policy making and decision making. So these are 4 of the past flagship reports we have been produced, and let me mention that all those reports are available online, free to download, so don't hesitate to go on the net and, oh, I'm interested in this one. 20 years ago, we looked at the social repercussion of globalization. We were, of course, finding out that globalization is also associated with increasing inequalities and power asymmetries. That was one of the topics of this report. We then thought that in order to tackle those increased inequality, it was not enough to rely only on market forces and competitions, and we also need governance, we also need public hands, we need visible hands. That was the 2000 flagship report. Then in 2005, we gave a specific focus on one of the most common and pervasive form of power asymmetry, gender. And we focus this flagship on gender equality. And again, in 2010, just as mentioned, we make the point that combating poverty in the social processes is absolutely crucial. But even more important is to look at inequality and the processes of increasing inequality. So that was the full past flagship report we have been provided. And the one that was just presented in the little trailer is the very last one that we have just published, which is the UNRWA's flagship report 2016, Policy Innovation for Transformative Social Change, Implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It was introduced in the trailer. What I would like to say now, just a few elements. Of course, I don't want to present everything that was done in this report, obviously. We focus on transformation in different topics. For instance, including care, climate policy, but what I would like to mention or to focus here is the topic on social and solidarity economy, which is quite related to the notion of social enterprise, social innovation, and social economy. Just to mention, because I'm on this slide, that this report will be launched next October 17 in Geneva. And you can look at the website because we have information and it will be entirely available to download as well. Everything UNRWA do is available free for everyone. This is one of our mandates, which is sometimes complicated in terms of self-financing, but I don't want to go into that detail. But just, it's available. And so take opportunity of it. This report, because I'm participating in 3 chapters on the social and solidarity, economy, climate, and governance. And we had a new way of doing. We put it online as a kind of a pre-report, and then we got feedback from the reader in order to integrate feedback from the reader. Of course, we already had previous feedback from our partners, but these were feedback from the reader. So the one that is going to be available on October on our website will be the final one ready to be downloaded. Well, I just mentioned that I'm going to focus on social and solidarity economy, and I cannot make a presentation on this, but let me just give you the way we understand social and solidarity economy. For us, we just consider that workers, producers, communities that are organizing in forms of production, exchange, consumptions, and even finance with explicit social and sometimes environmental objectives, trying to implement values and practices of cooperation and solidarity, and mobilizing at least some form of self-management and democratic decision-making, which this kind of, it's not a definition, it's a way to define a wide range of activities. It's a kind of conceptual, convening way to say there are a diversity of practices, but they share some common elements, they share some common characteristic. But of course, this is too broad in a sense. Whenever we talk about any type of activities, we have to look down to the context and to be context specific. What are the organizations we're talking about? What are the different constraints? What are the potentials? What are the innovations? And we have to be very careful of not thinking that something which is going to be very successful in one instance can so easily be transmitted or reproduced in another one, or that can be very easily scaled up, which is a topic in itself. So context matter, and we have to think of what is common, what can be learned from one experience to another, to practice from another, but beware of thinking that we can just reproduce an experience into another context. But let me also illustrate with some big number the scope of this social and solidarity economy. It's about 1 billion cooperative members around the world. There is a revival of cooperatives in Africa, Latin America, the rise of social enterprise in Europe and Asia. 2.5 million women self-help groups in India, growth of fair trade markets increasingly over $6 billion a year. There's a multiplication of solidarity finance schemes, an alternative type of finance. And at the global level, some of these actors, such as big corporations such as Mondragon or Global Network, are acting at the global level. So this is very often focusing on some local activities and innovative practices or actors. But there's a lot of representative, there's a lot of different networks, I'm going to talk about that later, that work at different levels, including the global level. Now, to come back to this flagship report, I just focus on the key messages and what it means, what the implication of this message is for social economy. Well, the key messages is quite simple in a way, that social innovations that are transformative, that have impact, that will transform, that will be successful, are the ones that address the root causes of inequitable and unsustainable outcomes, including social relations, formal and informal institutions, and power asymmetries. It includes governance aspects, it includes different legal elements, but the thing is that it is only by looking at those root factors that influence the dynamics that we can really think of being transformative, and not only transformative in the short run, but trying to have longer-term impact. So what does it mean for social and solidarity economy? It's just a few points. We could discuss this maybe later in a discussion session. But first of all, we have to recognize the multiple dimensions of social and solidarity economy. Social and solidarity economy and social enterprise and social business are not only about monetary dimensions. There are many different dimensions to be taken into account. An element which is important, profits. Profits are indeed essential for financial sustainability. It's essential also because we need to have a self-sustaining entity. But the way profits are defined, the frontier between the private cost of an enterprise and the social costs that are faced by society is also something that is defined by the legal environment, by the institutional environment. So it's important to go behind also this monetary dimension and to think there is also an environment in terms of legal and institutional framework that has to be taken into account. Then the social benefits is more than profits. Of course it is. We heard this young singer a few minutes ago saying that what was so important for those young people working in social business was to get some self-confidence. Self-confidence, self-emancipations. There are impacts and positive benefits at the individual and the collective level that are far from being only monetary in terms of impact. And the social impact, social benefit, which I would say in that term, it says positive social impact, are really important and crucial to understand and to focus on. More than profits. And if we say more than profits, is that also that sometimes the profit is difficult to get. And sometimes if we have social benefits that go broader than profits, it might be a way to think of the role for governments to support some of those activities, because there are some social elements that are benefiting to the whole society and sometimes even for future generations. And there is a dynamics. If someone has self-confidence because of his job, this will have impact within his or her family, and the children will grow in a better environment, and there will be a more inclusive economy and society, less exclusion and maybe less social tensions. All these elements are much broader than just net short-term profit, and that's, of course, you know. So it's also important as an implication of this perspective to think of, to look behind profit, to see social benefits, and also to look beyond single entrepreneur and to consider other type of actors, such as local communities, such as we have self-help groups in India. We have different type of association and foundation that can be providing a lot of social benefits that might be also considered, at least in this broad perspective of social and solidarity economy. And then, if we go behind single entrepreneur, we can also think of behind the market sphere. I was mentioning most of the boundary of the market are defined by the legal and institutional environment. Who has the right to do what? What is the legislation on this? What type of pollution am I allowed to do? This is the institutional and legal environment. So it's important to consider it and also to think how to act on it. And then, another and last important implication of this flagship report conclusion we had is the importance of truly participative approaches, and in particular in terms of policy, because I'll just remind you that this chapter focuses on policy innovation. Well, it's what we call as well the co-construction of policy. Professor Pestoff just mentioned the importance of co-production, mobilizing different elements of society in the production of public services. We think that the support for the social and solidarity economy should not be a way to have a public state supporting or financing some activities that are going to be dependent upon the state. Not at all. It should be trying to first recognize the quality and the benefit that is associated with those activities, and then recognize being the first step, trying to find a way to recognize institutionally a formal recognition of this activity, and maybe some public policy or policy package, including some facilitating credit, maybe facilitating fiscal elements, in order not to make the SSE actors dependent, but having a more enabling environment. And then, in order to do that, it's not possible to count only on the expertise of public services or actors. We need to get people involved, SSE actors themselves, involved in the process, not only at the implementation phase of the policy, but at the real early stage of policy making. So that's mainly the main elements that I would try to present to you based on research. But I told you that we have research, but also some kind of strategy to make policy uptake of the research we're doing. And one way, UNRIST has been quite active in bringing the social and solidarity economy topic within the UN. In May 2013, we organized the first conference within the UN on social and solidarity economy. Nearly no one knew about it before we brought it. So it was a kind of innovative way to say, well, hey, look, this is important. Of course, it comes from the ground. It's not something that comes from the UN General Secretariat. But there are interesting and important things. So look at it. And we organized this international conference in 2013. Then, we initiated with others, such as ILO and other UN agencies, a new type of what I would call institutional innovation, which is creating a UN task force on social and solidarity economy. And that was created in September of the same year, 2013. And this UN task force, and you have yes, you have it, the website, very on the bottom, and you have a look at it, because there's a lot of information, a lot of work we have been doing, and actually, since I'm saying this, I also brought a lot of leaflets and different elements you can take after the ceremony. I think they are at the registration desk. But what I want to say is that this UN Task Force agency is also something which is quite innovative, because the task force normally at the UN level are decided by the UN General Secretary. Say, oh, there is a very important topic now, for instance, on Syria. We need a task force on this. It's top down. Here, it's quite different. We from below thought that because there were a network of actors within different UN agencies interested in the topic of social and solidarity economy, tried to work as a network to bring out a new type of task force from the bottom. So this was not a kind of top-down task force, but a bottom-up task force. And now we have 19 members, UN agency members, among the most, the one you know the most, probably ILO, UNDP, UNEP, UNCTAD, UNRIST, of course, and recently FAO has taken a leading role as well. But what might interest you even more is that we also have observers, which is a way to say those partners are entire members of the task force, but they are not UN agency, but they are key in the way we want to set a dialogue between different actors. And if you look at the names we have here, and I don't want to mention all of them, but you'll see that these are many actors of the social and solidarity economy. We have the International Cooperative Alliance. We have the RIPES, which represent the grassroots organization. The Mont Blanc meeting, which is more the leaders in the same domain. And the Mont Blanc meeting, or the task force itself, is member of the leading group for SSE. And the leading group is a network of countries that try to implement and support the SSE at the national level. I mention this because this is at the international level. We have MS, so we have also academics, part of the task force. And we have DCEF and Fonds Mondial des Villes, which is the urban actors network at the global level. So what I would like to say here is that we try, as UNRIST, to mobilize this way of putting together different actors, making a dialogue, but also within this task force. So this task force is not only a UN task force. It is in line and in dialogue, entire dialogue with other actors, and especially because we think that we cannot talk about social and solidarity economy without taking seriously into account what the actors themselves have to say. Just a few quick elements. The roles of the task force is to enhance the recognition of SSE, and social enterprise and social economy is part of it in a way. We don't want to confuse both elements. It's two different approaches, but it's part of how to integrate the social into the economy anyway. Promote SSE and consolidate SSE networks, support an enabling environment for SSE, ensure coordination of international efforts, which is quite important for the task force, create and strengthen partnerships. And UNRIST, as a founding and leading member of the task force, has presented SSE and the task force in a wide range of fora. I can mention here, for instance, I was 2 years ago at the inaugural meeting of the Global Social Economic Forum in Seoul. We presented it as well at the first European Forum on Social Economy. We organize side events within the UN, for instance, at the General UN Assembly in September of 2015, where the Sustainable Development Agenda was signed. And quite recently, we had a side event at the 2016 High-Level Political Forum of Sustainable Development. So this is how we try to make impact, policy uptake of the research and of our way to mobilize partnerships and networks. So this is it, ladies and gentlemen. I would just like to remind you that, well, UNRIST might not be, might not have, for instance, the money to support a social entrepreneur or social economy. We cannot do that, but we have a convening power. We are kind of an entry gate to the UN. We are here to facilitate partnership. We are here to participate, to increase the possibility of having interaction between the UN and the non-UN world. This is our role, and so just think about it. Try to remember that we are having this convening power by doing research, but also by mobilizing our convening power within the UN, through the UN Task Force on SSE, but also in any type of opportunities, events that we can participate in. So please consider UNRIST as a natural partner in your future endeavor. We are here also to make these type of connections. And so now I just had a look at the program. I think it's a very exciting one. So I wish you the very best for this incredible social entrepreneur summit. So, and thank you for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pascal van Griethuysen. Thank you. It is very interesting to have a very global perspective. Please be seated. Our next session will be we will be inviting our local respondent Ada Wong and Francis to come on stage to interact with the two speakers. It is always interesting, as I said earlier, that we have a very macro perspective with all these UN projects and the Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy. In Chinese is 社會及 solidarity 團結社會及團結經濟。咁就this year we also have 香港嘅即係團結香港基金，咁佢哋一陣間都有個晏晝都有個分享嘅，其實都會分享下啲研究。咁今日都有一個研究係關於嗰個2蚊搭乘優惠嗰個社會影響究竟有幾大嘅。咁我都好想睇下究竟跟住點樣整出嚟個結果。咁啊，另外咧我都it is also an interesting time for Europe, isn't it? Countries are coming and maybe going. So it will be interesting to see how social innovation plays a role in the EU economy as well. Without further ado, may I invite our two respondents, Ada and Francis, to come on stage. Joining them will be our two distinguished speakers, Professor Victor Pestoff and also Dr. Pascal van Griethuysen, please. Ada and Francis, thank you so much for coming today. 多謝你兩位嚟。不如兩位嘉賓坐中間啦，好嘛 ？Ada 同阿 Francis 坐側邊啦，唔係要夾佢哋嘅，唔係想夾佢哋嘅。Thank you。咁我哋今日亦都有啲黃色衫嘅來自理工大學讀緊社企嘅同學仔，咁啊好感激呢班理工大學同學仔。望一望後邊咧，佢哋攞住啲問卷嘅。We have to do research for summit like this. So we are collecting response from the crowd as well. So please, 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 when you leave the convention hall, please take our questionnaire and fill it in, and then give it back to our helpers in yellow T-shirt. And can I have also two speakers to bring out 4 glasses of water to the guests, please? All right, without further ado, Ada, should I hand over to you first? Or would you like to start first? Or Francis, whoever. Ada.
Okay, yeah. Thank you to our two distinguished speakers. I think, we look at Hong Kong issues as very big. We magnify our own issues. But just now in the last hour, my mind shifted from our local issues to very international and thought-provoking international perspectives. So for that, I thank you very much. And in Hong Kong, we've come a long way. I would say that in the 5-6 years ago, the word social innovation is really not a government vocabulary yet. So social enterprises, they are. But social innovation, if you ask a government official, they'll say, now, what is this? So we've come a long way. We now have a social innovation fund. We now have a social innovation hub, which I found one of them. And we now have social innovation projects, incubation, and a lot of support from different sectors. But what you have reminded us is that we should really look bigger. We should be more macro. We should go back to our original intention to think about things that are beyond the individual entrepreneur and the individual innovators, to think about how we can promote transformative social change using different methodologies and by really creating an economy that is very social and with solidarity included in it. What Mr. Van Griethuysen, is that how you pronounce your name? He said was very relevant, including the social in the economy. I think, I don't know, I know that we have Asian participants here. I don't know whether it's true in your country, but in Hong Kong, we sort of separate the economy from the social. We will say, okay, we have got an economic development department in the government, and they are for prosperity of Hong Kong and increasing economic activities. Then we have the social welfare and labor department, and they will say, we are here for social compassion and for the betterment of improvement of lives of the underprivileged and the marginalized. But these two should be looked at together, and I think what the two speakers reminded us is that we should really think about systemic change, changes that would bring about a more just, more equitable, and more sustainable society in response to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I think this is actually the original intention of the Social Enterprise Summit, which is about collaboration, about partnerships, and about as Vincent was saying, 民商官學. So it's a partnership between the community, government, business, and the academic sector to make the society more participatory. And so going back to the first speaker, Professor Pestoff, I'm very, very inspired by what he said about co-production as a social innovation. We have not actually thought much about this aspect in the whole social innovation ecosystem. As I said, we have focused on supporting social startups and young social innovators in the past few years, and I think we've done tremendously. We have achieved a lot. But perhaps in the next phase of development, we should think about co-creation. We should think about widening participation in the society and getting more people involved as responsible stakeholders. So they should be responsible for their own lives, their own education, and their own social advancement, and not just be complainants. I think that's at least what I got, because in Hong Kong, we've got a really severe complaints culture. Government officials don't like it. Citizens, when they see a problem, they'll say, oh, it's the government's fault, and so let's complain to the government. And the government receives big and small complaints every day. If we continue to be like that, then the divide between the government and the people and the community would just get wider and wider. And as Professor Ostrom said so aptly, co-production or co-creation is really the way to go. Getting more people involved, and it should be more than consultation, treating them as agents of change, perhaps, and treating citizens' views in a new kind of public management. And on that, I would like to share a very short story with you on something which I'm doing. I think there are elements of co-production in it, and that is a social lab process that I'm going through. So I founded an initiative called Make a Difference, which nurtures young change makers in Asia. Recently, with the support of the Hong Kong Jockey Club and with the support of a think tank in the Netherlands, we started what we call Social Lab Project. We got different government departments to collaborate with young people in Hong Kong to think about services, to think about what should change. And the first social lab, which is actually ongoing right now, is a libraries project. So what that means is we all know that public libraries are very important community services, public services. But in the 21st century, fewer people are going to libraries, and they have IT tools. And also libraries need to change to respond to new community needs. So in the past week, government officials, so senior civil servants at the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, the librarians, together with 40 young people from different sectors, some of them are university students, some of them are young working adults, they joined hands and they did field research and ethnographic research, and they went to the community and asked the just ordinary Gai Fong and citizens to tell them about the stories of their lives. So, how is their life every day, and what does the library mean to them? So after this story collection will come the next phase of prototyping new ideas for the public services in libraries. So this is a really small project, and in no way this means that all public service will continue like that with a social lab model. But I think, again, thank you to the two speakers to tell us that we should really look beyond individual projects to think about the system, and true transformative social change is really our goal. Thank you.
So thank you so much, both speakers, for providing us a lot of new perspective. So I think I, as a business turned social entrepreneur working on the ground field work, I don't think I can capture all the theory or all the things that I cannot say that I understand everything you talked about this morning. It's very broad and very big concept that you're talking about. But I think riding on that, together with the 2 days Philanthropy for Better Cities that ran yesterday and the day before, I think overall what I captured is right now the overall social enterprise or social innovations movement in the last 20 or 30 years definitely attracted all different sectors' attention. So as you can observe, Michael Porter even talked about the social business of the creating shared value. So the business sectors right now, in these 2 days, a lot of big hats, a lot of the business sectors people come to this room, the same room here. As my observations in locally and Hong Kong, in the last 10 years, the movement has been going on. Apart from just double the number of social enterprises, I see the bigger movement going on right now is getting the attention of the government officials. As Florence said it, I think right now there are many more government officials, participators. Apart from just those social enterprise-driven policy focus, I think it's all in different policy bureaus, departments. They are all having the attentions of our social enterprise. Their knowledge about social enterprise did make a big movement right now. They understand more, so when social enterprise come to talk to them, at least they could have a knowledge about this. Ada run a lot of the cross-sector collaborations workshops, so that bring government officials, business people, and civil society or social entrepreneurs together. That build up a lot of new links. So apart from, we are always focusing on how many more number of social enterprises, how different aspects our social enterprise can solve different issues, I see that those new links are important to me. So as I heard from UN's effort or the observations from in Europe, I think it's all pointing to different sectors seeing this as a sort of a new hope that we can use really applying new methods to join all different silos, come together again. But I think with that, although in the last 10 years we have done a great job in pushing on the movement, but may I ask all the audience right now, how many of you actually are doing full-time job in social enterprise? Can you raise your hand? Or not just social enterprise, but if you are government officials, you are using 90% of your time in social enterprise, please raise your hand. Thank you so much. So I think it's less than 20. So if I think in the conference we talked about a summit, we are not having just around 20 persons working on full-time on social enterprise. I think the movement is not yet there. So I would say, also tap with the brain of the two experts here, as right now, how can we broaden the common ground? I see that in many different countries, social enterprise become an industry. They get their own funding, they got their own policy on that. But I think, are we creating another silo? Can we broaden the common ground, making it relevant to the business sector? The traditional nonprofit sector foundations, they treat it as a new tools, renovating the current work, or are we living in another silo? And also I think I'm always concerned about the outside conference aftermath. So after the conference, how can we turn all these things into meaningful actions? I think UN, we talked about sustainable development goal, it's all makes sense. But I think right now, what we observed locally is people understand people get to know about climate change. They know that poverty, Hong Kong, Gini coefficients were well number one. But I think how many of us seriously making all these things into actions? So maybe it's micro actions. One example is that Florence also supported a lot is on Green Monday that I have to talk briefly about. People in Hong Kong get to know climate change. I think many advocates educated us for 10 or 20 years, if not longer. But I think how many of us are having our actions every day to work on that? So I think Green Monday is very easy. It's just like Meatless Monday, Meat-Free Monday. We are advocating one day meat-free. Why Monday is because weekend we eat too much. These 2 days we meet with relatives and having party. But I think Monday we have Blue Monday. So instead of starting out with a bad mood, we start with a mission. So it's the Green Monday is the concept. But I think surprisingly over the last 4 years, we really influencing the culture, turning from before people think that vegetarian diet, plant-based diet is just something old-fashioned, old people would do, the Buddhists would do. But I think right now it is making a culture now in Hong Kong. More than almost 2 million people at least having one day meat-free habits. How many of you are Green Monday doer here? Can you raise your hand? Oh, it's still not a lot. Don't worry, you're not too late. Monday is coming, so you can do your own Green Monday in the coming Monday. But I think also over 2,000 restaurant outlets and schools joined Green Monday. The normal restaurants, mainstream, even McDonald's joined some tactical campaign for that. So because for them, it's new business. Right now, a lot of vegetarian rushing into the mainstream restaurants. So to everybody, I think the micro action is just one day meat-free. And we are telling them over 14.3% of the climate change issue actually is from the meat industry. Growing one cow for 1 year is like driving for 70,000 kilometers. So it's a big thing for the environment. But at the same time, if we are providing some good, delicious vegetarian food for you, they all think that it's workable. So I think I would say that right now with the micro actions, right now apart from Hong Kong, we are spreading out the word to 30 more countries. That would be one example that I'm thinking that we should have more these kind of micro actions, getting everyone, all the citizens coming to the common ground and then working on actions. So actions and how can we broaden the common ground is what I'm looking for to have more insight from two experts.
Yeah, thank you, Ada and Francis. Our two speakers, you have any initial feedback on our respondents' opinion?
Yes, thank you for both of these interventions. To my colleague on my left, this social lab project you're doing sounds quite interesting, and I would encourage you to write it up as a conference paper to the IRSPM, the Internet, the Research Society for Public Administration, and then perhaps also submit it to the Public Management Review, because this is quite an interesting experiment just in co-production and how we can actively promote co-production, getting the citizens' input in order to have better developed services that can perhaps also include them in a more active way. So you're not just served with a lot of interesting books, both classics and contemporary books, but we can use these facilities in a better fashion. I know, particularly in the summer, opening up the libraries, having reading sessions for the younger children is a good way to do it. So I'd welcome you to write this up, and if you care to share with me beforehand, I could even make a few comments on it. Concerning this idea of micro-action and the question of silos, trying to bring them together, the whole basis for what I didn't spend much time on, this idea of a new concept of new public governance is based on network theory. It's the idea of breaking down these silos. And the main thrust of my message was, let's start talking as scientists, as academics, and also as practitioners, those who are interested in social enterprise, those who are interested in social innovation, and also co-production, because co-production is so much more than just citizens participating in the provision of public services. It's also giving citizens a feeling of belonging, an actual stake in what's being done in order to activate them, turn them from being passive recipients of services. So this is why it's so necessary to have a dialogue to try to achieve these synergy effects that are potentially there, that already in the 70s Elinor Ostrom pointed to. So I think this is really quite interesting, and I personally support this idea of a Green Monday. I would like to include a few more days of the week. Thank you.
Dr. Griethuysen. Yes, thank you for these very interesting comments. I would like to say that when we thought about innovation at Enrist, social innovation, we identify different type of innovation: organizational innovation, technology, governance, institutional policy, but also conceptual innovation. And in terms of conceptual innovation would be to see the economy or the economic system differently. You were mentioning that you in Hong Kong have the tendency, or not only in Hong Kong, to see, I mean, economists usually do see the economic system as a kind of autonomous sphere. A different perspective, just to look at the economy as part of a wider social system, which is what the institutional and social economy is about. So just part of it. And if it's part of it, there is just permanent interaction. And you can think of the social and the economy as a kind of dialectical relationship between economic actors and their social environment. And one of our recommendations for policy in the flagship report is to say, keep in mind that policy should embed economic activities within an social and environmental context. This is absolutely true and important. And the same when you mention about the government or the economic actors, it's also the same. I mean, it's not government against economic actors. How can they work together in a kind of dialectical relationship which is fruitful for all of them, because it's still the same society. And if you want to avoid social exclusion, it might not be business, but it might be the role of government. But business can be active in including people, excluded people within the economy. So again, it's a kind of dialectical relationship. Maybe a point of what you were saying, quite interesting. Social business, very attractive, but we could do more. And this is something I have, as I have been also an academic prior to joining the UN. And it seems to me that one of the limitations of social business, social enterprise, is the criteria of profitability. What is not profitable will not be given consideration. If it's not profitable, private actors cannot do it. And in a competitive environment, it's not only profitability, it's relative profitability. You not only need to be profitable, you need to be more profitable than the competitors. Otherwise, money gets to the competitors. This means that some even profitable activities will not be done because of this competitive pressure. And I think this is one of the reasons why I said prior that social impact is more than profits. And the social impact that we have with those social enterprise, social economy, and social and solidarity economy deserve a different perspective, deserve a real concern of government, but also of community and different civil society organizations, because it goes beyond profits. And this is why social enterprise, for me, is part of a wider movement. And it's not saying that it's part of a wider movement or that some elements are in a macro environment, that micro project are not important. Not at all. Every level is absolutely crucial. You don't create anything at the macro level. At the UN, we don't do anything. Everything that is done, it's at the local specific context. But we can think of how to integrate the different level, how to think of mobilize differently the different level, and in order that they work in a more efficient way, systemically. So that is very important. This idea of systemic perspective, I think, is crucial. I come from Switzerland, which is a federalist country, every level is very important, but we still need all the levels. We could not have the federation without having some local actors to do some things on the local context. So again, these are different levels, but they are all important. And to think at the multi-level, multi-scalar approach is very important. And each step, each level has its own role.
Thank you, our two speakers. Interesting discussion. And also, can I have a round of applause for our two respondents, Ms. Ada Wong and Mr. Francis Tan. Can I have a group photo together with the four of you? And also, I would like to invite the representative for ICEA, Professor Katie, and also Alan as a representative for the SEF to take a group photo together. Can I have a change of the photo backdrop? Yes, thank you.
Picture. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very nice. Very nice.
And do remember to fill in the questionnaire, please. We would love to have your opinion. And if you can look at this 2-page of our program book, we also printed it separately. Our next session will begin in 6 minutes and 11 seconds, which means 11:15, on the second floor. Some of our facilitators are walking over there now. You can also turn right or left to the second floor. Just to remind you that the organizing committee have decided that it is quite important to have enough time for discussion. That's why we only have a half an hour lunch break today, from 12:45 to 1:15. So the next session will begin at 11:15 to 12:45, and the next session after that is 1:15 to 2:45. The final session before the closing plenary today is from 3 to 4:30. And do remember to come back to the convention hall by 4:45, no later than 4:45. Our closing discussion will be very interesting. We'll have distinguished, really world-class professor to come back to have a four-way dialogue: Korea, mainland China, and then Japan, Taiwan, with two facilitators from Hong Kong. So we will have the breakout sessions right now, and do come back by no later than 4:45. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.